Hello everyone, my name is Russell Wright. I'd like to welcome you to this web page. Probably you've arrived at epimemetics.com, and this is a special video that I'm creating to catch up with all of you who might have landed on this page. Because of my notoriety in business, and I'm a developer of software in the technology and marketing industries, specifically search engine marketing, latent semantic indexing algorithms, automatic backlinking and traffic systems, the semantic web, along with my team. Because I'm getting so much traffic overflow to this, what some are calling very strange and bizarre page, I feel like it's important for me to provide some guidance and explanation to students who might be arriving and entering into a completely different dimension. It's during the arrival on this page where you might expect the entrance of the theme song to the Twilight Zone. You have entered a new dimension of time and space. And it's for this reason, because of the high profile that much of my work is getting, at least within my industry and some others, that I feel obligated to talk to you about epimemetics, so that you know why it was created, and to communicate with you that it's merely and only a theory, and it started out as a joke between two software engineers, namely myself, Sue Bell, and other conversations I had after talking more about memes, when memes first came on the market. When I say came on the market, the idea of memes, I was talking about memes as far back as 2008 and 9. My children thought I was crazy about it, and now a meme is a household name, and of course has changed its meaning, and we also offer training on how to manipulate memes on the internet. So being a futurist and a visionary, I can say that a lot of the times myself and my team is accurate in predicting cultural influences. And of course, the technology industry ultimately is a derivative of culture and vice versa. It's hard at this point to determine which one influences the other. Does culture influence technology, or does technology influence culture? It's almost like the same argument. Does life imitate art, or does art imitate life? And the answer is something that epimemetics is all about. Now, there are lots of conversations out there as to whether epimemes are a real thing, in the same way that epigenes are a real thing. In the same way that there's arguments about the validity of epigenetics, there of course will be arguments about the validity of epimemetics, as in memes. I find that all very ironic, because both of them, both memes and epimemes, are theoretical. And that's the entire point. So first and foremost, epimemetics is actually a meta-philosophy. Hardcore philosophers, perhaps even some of my friends and associates who've created amazing works, like the Futureka trilogy, Alexander Bard and Jan Söderqvist, and other brilliant minds of our time who are considered probably on the forefront of predicting the philosophical impact of technology on culture, may consider meta-philosophies to be marginally useful at best. But to be clear, I want you to understand why this philosophy was created and what a meta-philosophy is, so that you understand what this madness is on this page. And it's actually not madness. You know, a few years back, much of the stuff that we taught in search engine optimization and technology optimization and semantic web predictions were considered madness. I doubt that the meta-philosophy of epimemetics is any less mad. It's probably equally, if not more, projected into the future. It's probably equally, if not more, a vision of things to come, a vision of the transformation of culture and the way we stack our philosophies, and how it will influence culture and therefore ultimately technology. And it also could be utter bunk. And I first and foremost want to emphasize that all of my philosophies and ideas and concepts, every company I've ever built, that's risen or fallen, that's failed or succeeded, are all experiments. The universe itself could arguably be considered more or less a sequence of incredibly rapid experiments, failing and succeeding over vast eons of time. So first and foremost, the reason I created epimemetics is during a workshop and during a sabbatical that I had on Kauai, Hawaii, I got very deeply into a philosophy and some of the work of Mark Evan Furman, neuroprinting, and a variety of other, what I would consider to be neurotheology topics. And neurotheology is a kind of a buzzword for the combination of religion, spirituality, esotericism, and neuroscience. And again, everybody is over neurosciencing everything right now in culture, but that doesn't make it wrong, and it doesn't make a lot of the concepts incredibly helpful when combined, I believe, when combined with a variety of other disciplines. Neuroscience has a place. So I asked myself during this time, if I were to live my life backwards, what would I want to live for my children? What would I want to leave for my children? What kind of ideas that I found have helped me would I want to leave a solid foundation? Not just an argument, not just hype, not just another self-help or scheme. And it was philosophy. Alexander Bard says it takes a good 40 or 50 years for a philosopher's work to move into the market. I'm not a real philosopher. I'm a mere meta-philosopher. I'm hoping that somebody will go and take this work and collaborate with it, because ownership is one of the very, ownership of ideas is one of the very things that's questioned. The foundation of ownership of ideas or memes or meta-memes is one of the founding questions of epimemetics, experimental meta-philosophy. So one of the things I wanted to leave for my children was a system of thought that would allow them to realize that memes or ideas are viruses. And it's not a position that people really like, at least right now. I believe it's one that we will fully understand when we get to the bottom of mirror neurons, when we understand memes in the same way that Susan Blackmore has discussed them. I believe that ultimately ideas and entire idea plexes, or what we call meme plexes, will be understood to be influential neuronodal matrices of association that can quickly be ascertained, parsed, ascertained, and true ideas versus incorrect or ideas will be able to be extracted from large masses of meme plexes. And the distinction between technology and neuroscience will start to become less and less as we move forward in time. This little image on the screen from the genes all the way up to the unknown replicator. I left the unknown replicator and do study replicators on the page below because we don't really know what the hell's going on, and nobody's been able to actually predict what my friend, late great friend Terence McKenna called the alien artifact at the end of time, which was definitely not 2012, but it was a great idea. It was a great meme that got a lot of attention, attracted a lot of attention. We don't know where the human species is actually going completely, and I'm not going to claim to. It wasn't my intent for epimemetics to have an arrogance behind it. It was an intent to leave behind for my children an understanding that ideas can be as toxic and destructive to culture as a virus is to the body. I believe that's helpful information. First given to me in a book called Viruses of the Mind by James Brodie. And I want to thank him for, I believe it's James Brodie. We'll look on the page here. It's either Richard or James Brodie. And that similarly excellent ideas, such as some of the ideas of Buckminster Fuller and other great mystics, saints, and engineers, scientists, quantum scientists, those same ideas create universes. And the challenge that I have is when I got into the self-help, I'm going to look over here on this other screen here so that I can read something. And my friend Peter Voogd wrote very, very well. And this is also what I discovered after attending and analyzing literally thousands of self-help gurus, books, information, technology, really get into the self-improvement industry, the self-help, not just merely the self-help, but the self-improvement world of business and online business, because it took me a while to break through from, I need to believe in something into I need to believe and execute specific stacks of logical sequences in order to become successful. There's a lot of stuff out there that really sounds a lot like self-help, like belief is all that you need. And that's why I joke around with the site here, Epimemetics, which may be gone by the time you see it. Insert belief here. That is actually the title. Because I began to realize that beliefs are numbered and people don't have necessarily a great way to validate beliefs because we're lost in the soup. We're like a fish swimming in water and we can't see the water. We are ideas. We are an idea, and we're swimming in a sea of ideas. And it's hard to determine right or wrong. So what you get is skepticism. And the whole skepticism universe has had an immense amount of positive things to offer to help children and even human beings involve themselves in critical thinking techniques and methods. And the problem with it is a lot of the skepticism and the works of Skeptical Inquirer, the works of ironically, the work of Richard Dawkins, who actually started my whole journey in the area of epimemes in The Selfish Gene and the rest. These guys start to become a little bit full of what I call pseudo-skepticism, meaning they've already ruled out anything that doesn't fit in their worldview. And what happens is that creates cognitive dissonance at a fundamental level of their unconscious mind, so that it becomes really, really difficult to determine when they are getting in their own way. And then they become, like much science and even quantum physics is becoming at this point, a kind of cult of rhetoric in which it really would be hard to find out if they are capable of having a new idea, because they have decided that, based on the momentum or the neuroplasticity of their skepticism, that just everything that doesn't fit within a certain logical and neural pathway should be thrown out with the rest of the trash. Now, I agree that you should, probably if I throw a bowling ball into the air, that bowling ball is not going to hover, to the moon. In other words, there's limits to faith. But the issue that I have with pseudo-skepticism is that we don't understand how ideas are stacked. And if we don't really understand the neurotheology of belief, even the skeptical side, the so-called scientific side of belief, that the same traps that exist with the theologian, with the mystic, and with the radical believers that don't require any logic whatsoever, if we don't realize that the same pitfalls and trapdoors, mental trapdoors that occur within a fanatical religious sect, for instance, are potentials within the scientific and pseudo-skeptical community, what we have is just another extreme. So it's the same side of the same coin. And this is where I feel some of the neuroscience will help us. Some of the quantum physics could help us. If we're so quick to throw out the works of amazing mental artists and physics artists such as Bill Tiller, or any of the psychonauts and shaman that I've studied with throughout the world, and including having taken doses of psychedelics myself, if we aren't at least willing to address the issues in regards to ideas and beliefs themselves, what I call meta-beliefs, then we could become just as tyrannical with our left brain, which is a sort of inaccurate analogy as to how the brain works left and right. But if we become polarized in one frame or the other, absolute skepticism or absolute belief, we are subjected to the same limits as any culture that has gone before us. And I think this is covered brilliantly well in the Futureka trilogy by my friend Alexander Bard and Joan Zuderquist, and also in their predictions of the future of God and its relationship to the internet in their book Syntheism. So one of the things I'd like to say is my friend Peter Mook talked about something that happened to him at a Tony Robbins event. And he said, at a Tony Robbins event, I learned something that I will never forget. There's a ton of useful information at Tony Robbins events, but this stands out as perhaps more than anything else. Tony was talking about the most successful people he ever met and what they had in common. These are people like Richard Branson, Oprah Winfrey, Warren Buffett, and other successful entrepreneurs playing the game at a much higher level, the money game. From the world's most successful business moguls to superstar athletes, Tony discovered that they all do one thing that is key consistently that the other 99% of humanity doesn't do. These are the choices that this 1% cultural creative caste does, is that they have decided that they are responsible for the string of successes that they always experience. And the successful implementation of this big secret is what he discovered. This is Tony Robbins discovered, that some of the greatest minds, athletes, and successful people of our time have implemented and understand. Here it is. They protect their minds daily. They protect their minds daily. And they feed their minds things that allow them to understand how to protect their mind. Not in a way that's a psychic immune system from everything, but they utilize their own discernment. In other words, these people, these successful people, are extremely protective of their conscious and subconscious minds. And they do everything they can to keep their mindset top-notch and always alert. Not just a positive outlook, okay, here's the thing, is that they're intelligent, inquisitive people that question both polarities, extreme skepticism all the way to pseudo-skepticism, to extreme belief all the way to jumping off of a bridge and hoping you'll fly to prove that you believe in God, okay? In other words, some of the most intelligent and powerful people of our time have an immense psychic immune system and self-discernment that allows them to ascertain what is true for them, and move forward even though the rest of the world around them tells them that nothing like this can be accomplished. In other words, they are iconoclasts, okay? So the main thing that Peter's trying to say is be careful what you let into your mind, because what you think about starts and begins everything. It's a beginning point for everything. You will always act based on what thoughts come first. And the scary thing is our mind is always being bombarded with thoughts and ideas from the outside world. This is really what epimemetics is about. Epimemetics is about helping you to realize that ideas are alive. And in the same way, the selfish gene discusses the gene as being literally a virus designed to pass on our genetic information, not necessarily a bad virus, just has a viral tendency. In the same way, memes, as we talk about viral marketing, are ways for ideas to get passed on. And sometimes the ideas that get passed on and impregnate culture and become a disease in culture. In other words, they're not values or ideas that you necessarily want to embrace. And because teams or technology memes, which we're talking about right here on the third replicator, because they are such a significant, because technology has become so widespread with social media, it's incredibly difficult. You have to have a conscious act of staying focused and of managing your attention. And part of that conscious act is being aware that memes are alive and not underestimating the power of ideas. That ideas can infect your mind like a disease can infect your body. And this is not a fear-based philosophy. It's just stating the fact. I don't go in the same way that I don't go around worried about whether a disease is going to infect me, because that fear probably reduces my immune system response anyways. There's a lot of evidence in this area. The University of Millard Fillmore Hospital in Buffalo, New York has done amazing tests, University of Ithaca, on the immune system response to belief. And there's a lot of other work being done on this. My point is that we now live in an environment where the very things that our memes have created, our ideas have created, technology, the technologies themselves are now becoming self-replicating. They now can spread on their own. Okay, self-replicating nanotubules, little robots that self-replicate. We have all kinds. We're going to higher and higher levels of self-replication and artificial intelligence. And the key here is social media as a part of the movement of ideas through vast networks with almost no awareness of how incredibly powerful these technologies are to ruin our lives, change our lives, transform our lives. One of the famous stories is of Justine Succo in the book by John Ronson called So You Have Been Publicly Shamed, is the name of the book. This woman literally did a single tweet, and on the way from the United States to South Africa, by the time she had arrived to South Africa, this tweet had gone around the world 3 times. She'd lost her job. There was a violent crowd waiting for her at the airport in South Africa, in Johannesburg, and she'd lost everything that was true to her, and the entire world thought she was a racist by one single tweet. And if a tweet is an idea being passed through a technology or a team, okay, that's the kind of world that we live in. And epimemetics is a philosophy that's an experimental philosophy that's in an active evolution. It's evolving. We must appreciate the power of ideas and technologies to completely change our world with a single tweet, a single push of a button. By not understanding and appreciating and respecting the sheer power of the dynamic that we now have with the stacking of genes, memes, teams, and ultimately epimemes. Honestly, I believe culture has got real challenges. Epimemes are, the difference between an epimeme and a meme in this proposed philosophy is that epimemes are true across multiple disciplines. They are principles, not facts. They are principles, not facts. This is an idea that I learned from one of my dear friends in the world of sacred geometry, a protege of Buckminster Fuller. Principles can be true across multiple dimensions and vectors. Okay, they are scalar. Whereas ideas, not so much. An idea in one discipline might really, like 2 + 2, might make sense in the world of math, but it may not make sense in the world of spherical calculus. 2 + 2 might actually be and -4 in certain instances. In fact, there is a math equation that very strangely 2 + 2 is not 4. Okay, so the challenge that we have is to understand three-dimensional vectors, multidimensional physics, and to recognize that truth is not copyrightable, and that memes change and flex, and that we need to understand the distinction between an idea and truth in one dimension and truth in all dimensions, vectors versus points, and that we're going to be moving in a time and space where information becomes part of that challenge, it becomes part of that problem, becomes part of culture, and that what I want to leave behind with my children is the understanding that we have to protect our minds. It's becoming more and more difficult for people to be present, and I see people hanging out with family that they barely get to see anyways, and tweeting and twittering. My girlfriend and I were at a Italian place, and we saw an entire family, a wife, a husband, and 3 children, all on their iPhones, and they didn't say a word to each other the entire time, and they were all using their technology memes, their team, and they were no longer having a relationship in real time, and they were sitting at the same table. Very strange. But part of, and it's not judgment, this is just part of the cultural evolution from genes invaded by teens, technology means, where the technology becomes more important than your genetic heritage. This is going to be a challenge because it's a massive shift of values and beliefs and meta-beliefs. And I believe that bringing conscious acts of cultural creation to this awareness by understanding how these things all connect, understanding that we need to partake in becoming consciously aware, what Bill Tiller calls conscious acts of creation. We really need to become aware of how culture, how our genes, and how our neuroplasticity, the very fragile neuroplastic aspects of our cultural selves, are being imprinted by technology. And that's really what epimemetics is about. So I've heard people at my conferences say, well, I've read your stuff, it's so incredibly far out there. Here's one thing to be clear, what's so cool about epimemetics is none of these ideas are my own. It's a lifelong project. This is not like, oh, when's your book on epimemetics going to come out? This is me taking David Furman's work and realizing that if I would live my life backwards, what would I want to leave? I would want at least my children and my generation to know that I made an attempt to make some clarity out of what some construe to be madness, that attention and energy and the purpose of my life was worked on, and that at least an hour a week I consciously contribute to my big 100,000-foot view project, the big life project. David Allen called it the 100,000-foot view in getting things done. And it's true, it's not really about action management. It's not really even about energy management, as Peter Voog talks about. It's actually about, it's not even about action or energy, it's actually about purpose management. And the management of purpose in your life really requires that you live backwards. So I would encourage all of you watching this to take one big project in your life, one that you know you can't complete, and just start it and begin and say, hey, by the time I'm 70, epimemetics is finally a philosophy that's been clearly thought out, and the collaborative philosophy is worked out, and the things that are not true about it, that didn't stick. Remember, we have to be careful that truth is not by any means a requirement for a meme to propagate. That's the problem with memes, is that they're not required to be epimemes or principles that are true on multiple dimensions. So one of the things I would just encourage you to do is just think about your big idea. Epimemetics is this biggest one I could create, a philosophy that maybe gains a foothold in culture, and maybe a couple million or people or a billion people or more know about it, and it's gotten some kind of, and at least I don't want to say at the end of my life that I didn't try to provide a unique perspective, a new philosophy, a new meta-philosophy, even to be proven wrong. And so this is my big project, and this is what epimemetics is below you. So one thing I would say in regards to that is I'm going to read the current definition of epimemetics. And I'm going to read it. So here's the abstract, and this abstract is something that's going to be an entire lifetime work in progress. Because I'm running multiple businesses, because I'm an entrepreneur, a serial entrepreneur, because I have these things, it's something that is in constant refinement. Fail faster, succeed. Fail faster, succeed. Right now, I'm the only one working on this project, and so this is where we stand. First of all, epimemetics is both an intentional. Let me go ahead and put it here. Let's go ahead and look at this. Epimemetics is an intentional systems theory and meta-theory of social evolution that predicts the existence of the fourth, fifth, sixth, and sixth cultural replicator. The axiom of epimemetic theory is derived from multidisciplinary conclusions about mathematical recursion or recursive embeddedness. Now, please do understand that I have a lifelong involvement with some of my mentors, proteges of Buckminster Fuller, on the concept of recursive embeddedness. And I believe that it holds a key. And this is something I would like to leave behind for my children. It's also probably plays a significant role in hard artificial intelligence. So recursive embeddedness as it relates to emergence theory and Robert Lanza's biocentric university theory. This is just a theory, okay? It may or may not be true. The meta-theory of epimemetics was first proposed by me of Epimemetics LLC and was approved as a default domain in Freebase, blah, blah, blah. With epimemetic theory, the fourth replicators are predicted to evolve sometime after Susan Blackmore's third replicators called teams or technology memes. Okay, fourth replicators are epimemes. See Susan Blackmore's TED Talks, Memes, Teams, 2011. She's really the one who started these ideas. Let me go ahead and just shrink this back in here. The replicator is a concept first theorized by Richard Dawkins in his highly controversial book, The Selfish Gene. As a meta-theory, epimemetics proposes a stacked epistemology as suggested by George M. Whiteside in his groundbreaking TED Talk on simplicity versus emergence theory. In this context, epimemetics itself emerged as a meta-theory that predicts the existence of a human culture that has evolved to a higher order of lateral capacity. Okay, and that's my hope. It's just a hope, though. Additional benefits could be increased emotional intelligence, global increases in cultural creativity, and biological coherence, which is an entirely other topic. Epimemetic theory suggests that such coherent signs could occur as the fourth replicator emerges out of Susan Blackmore's third. The timing and extent of this cultural emergence is undefined, as it may be largely dependent upon the outcome of mankind's relationship with artificial intelligence, augmented reality, and or technology as prosthesis. Okay? So hopefully this gives you a little bit of an idea. It's just a fun, lifelong philosophy. Okay? And when I talk about this, we're really looking at the ideas that will fit in the fourth replicator principles. Right now in quantum physics, we are only beginning to understand the double slit experiment and the fact that particles and waves behave oddly in relationship to each other and perception. I personally believe it's a prediction, and it could be wrong, and I'm willing to be wrong, that perception will very likely be discovered to be entangled quantumly with the sub-quantum universe. And what we mean by that is that when quantum physicists begin to understand the strange behavior, even laser polarized, even the attempts to use lasers to finally crack the code of this double slit experiment, it's very likely that we will see that the brain itself, the observer, and is deeply involved in of how the experiment comes out at a subquantum level at least, and that ultimately we will have to go deeper into the way the brain works, the mind works, and the neural matrix works in order to fully grasp the holographic universe and or the way that particle and wave seem to contradict each other at the subquantum levels of observation in the lab. And so really it was with that I decided that to leave behind something for my children, that if I wasn't able to take it very far, perhaps some of these young, brilliant minds, using perhaps the work of Bill Tiller, if it hasn't been proven true or distrue by the time that my life is coming to a retirement phase, then some of these other young, talented minds will be able to take these questions on, because first we must agree that they are important questions. And then second, we must begin to understand how to look at these questions differently. And so obviously most of you who've either purchased my products or run my software know that I'm a big thinker and always have been. Perhaps this project will dry up and die out, and perhaps not. Perhaps, like many philosophers, after my passing or later in my life, I'm hoping, somebody with a better mind and a more clear understanding of philosophy, and perhaps even some better ideas, will begin to enter into this philosophy and, keep the good stuff, get rid of the bad stuff, and maybe say, hey, there were some good ideas in this philosophy. So welcome to Epimemetics, the meta philosophy. And remember, guard your mind every day as technology gets more rapidly connected to our cell phones. We will be constantly in an attempt of machines to invade your mind and to give you all kinds of ideas. It's up to you to consciously turn things off, take back control of your time, and build your business. If I didn't get hours of quiet and solitude every day without turning off social media, there's no way I could be building multi-million-dollar businesses. And that's what I really want my children to know, is you've got to turn it off sometimes, because every time it's on, the machines, by the time you're watching this maybe decades down the road, the machines will have been so well programmed, because I know I'm involved in this kind of programming, that they will jack every ounce of attention, as Alexander Bard and John Suderquist call it. Attentionalism is the new currency online. And the people, I predict that the people who can actually take their time back and create privacy and turn things off and not be influenced by digital memes, teams, social media accounts, distractions, latent semantic advertising, and all kinds of other mind-jacking devices will be extremely rare. People that can take control, protect their mind, these great individuals that, like Tony Robbins talking about, all the billionaires in the world who can think for themselves. I think it's going to become very rare that people have that kind of discipline and attention. Further, I think probably if things get too bad and the distraction gets too intense, it will have to be a required course in college and universities on how to take back your time and focus on your inner energy and focus on who you are and stay inspired from within yourself. And that's, if I'm successful with epimemetics at one thing, just to teach you that memes can be just as toxic as a poison can be in your food to your mind. If nothing else, it might be a long way around to do that, create an entire philosophy to teach people how impressionable the mind is and how deeply it instructs and informs or disinforms the soul. It might be a huge challenge, but if I can do that and it can gain foothold in culture, then I would have been successful in helping you find out who you really are, live your life backwards, create the life of your dreams, and understand the distinction between a great visionary and somebody who just gets lost in the sea of bad ideas. Thank you.